Chuah Hock Seong started on a very different sort of job in 1979. The government had urgent economic priorities for Singapore, but also wanted a cleaner, greener city.
Mr. Lee has said that if we don't have greenery, people will be living in the concrete jungles.
Singapore would remake itself into a global business hub. Key to that transformation was the emergence from slums and swamps of a garden city, planned and cultivated by a generation of professionals like Chuah Hock Seong. In today's Singapore, almost every housing development is within a 10-minute walk away from a park or garden. These green lungs are the work of dedicated professionals who designed, built, and now painstakingly maintain their creations. Chuah Hock Seong joined Singapore's Parks and Recreation Department in 1979.
And I see the park is well used by residents or publics, or like this morning, we have a group of students come over here to have a running exercise. I'm very excited because it proves that the park is well received. I seen all these trees grow from the tree sapling, the small tree, to now mature tree. So I look at it, I'm very, very excited, and I took them as my children.
Chuah and his colleagues didn't just grow parks and gardens.
Good morning.
They nurtured a garden city. A massive project that began 40 years ago in the 1970s, when Singapore's urban landscape was a long ways away from the modern metropolis of its aspirations.
When I was studying in Nanyang University in 1973, the first trip I made to the city was to apply for student pass. So my impression of the city was quite bad. For example, areas in the city like Bras Basah Road, Shenton Way and Robinson Road hardly see any greenery. The feeling is that I was standing within the so-called a concrete jungle.
The ambitious vision of a garden city dates back to the 1960s.
Our founding Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, have a vision in the 60s. He foresees that Singapore will have a rapid urbanization in the next decades. So he set a target that Singapore must become a garden city. People will live, play and work in the garden setting environment.
The plan to transform the city's physical landscape, alongside its economic one, required a unified and collective approach. All hands, minds and hearts across multiple agencies got into the act in the form of a Garden City Action Committee.
But I will need to have a row of very dignified looking trees.
Dr. Tan Wee Kiat, who was Chuah Hock Seong's boss, was heavily involved in the Garden City Action Plan, which was executed in 1971. Dr. Tan recalls those early days and the enduring merits of Prime Minister Lee's pragmatic strategy.
He actually implemented the first platform for interaction of agencies, so that all the agencies that used to be at each other's throats, like for instance, Parks and Recreation would plant a tree, Public Works Department would come, widen the road, rip up the tree. So there was no synchrony, no working together in complementation. So he formed the Garden City Action Committee, and I recall Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong at the time laughing and saying that it's the only cabinet that reads a garden report during cabinet meetings.
In 1979, Singapore's economy blossoms, and early seeds of the Garden City plan begin to bear fruit. Chuah Hock Seong, a biology undergrad in Singapore's Nanyang University, witnesses the city transform.
When I came down to town area, the buses passed through Bukit Timah. I was very impressed that the existing trees are well kept and maintained. And also, I passed through this Jurong area public housing estate, and I saw young plants were planted along roads, beside blocks, and in car parks.
The city's transformation inspires Hock Seong to develop a personal vision of his own.
I think there will be some opportunity to get a job, because since the government is pushing for the greenery and a lot of tree planting, they need people to take care and maintain. So I choose to study applied plant sciences when I proceed to do my master degree. Many of my friends find it very strange. I studied 4 or 5 years of tertiary education. End up I become a gardener. Okay, work under hot suns, just planting trees and shrubs, you know, and even plant grass and maintain it. I used to explain to them that we are not only planting trees, we are providing a service to the people.
In 1965, newly independent Singapore has an urgent set of priorities. Chief amongst the strategies are plans to industrialize, create jobs, and house a population. But the government of the day also put its weight behind another priority, far less expected for most other developing nations. The plan to green up the city stemmed from visionary aspirations.
When you build a new country, the most important thing to do is economic, defense, health. Greenery is like so-called dessert, you know. After your full meal, main course, and you find that you still got some money, you order a cup of ice cream. So many countries put greenery as secondary.
The forward thinking to set aside and create green spaces from the start allowed Singapore's national gardeners like Chuah Hock Seong to plan green spaces as the city developed, rather than after the fact. Today, all things green and natural dominate the city's physical landscape. So successful was the Garden City plan that Singapore has now become almost a city in a garden.
By virtue of my job, whenever I drive along the road, I not only pay attention to the road condition, but also sometimes look at the trees. All these roadside greenery make a difference to the road environment. Just imagine if you take away all these trees, you have different feeling and experience when you drive along the road.
How deep is this water body?
It is 0.8 meter the most. Then you can see the bottom.
All the bottom, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite safe.
Even during drought, it will not be dried up.
66-year-old Chuah Hock Seong has been a horticulturalist, or put more simply, a landscape designer and gardener for Singapore for 40 years. First at the Parks and Recreation Department, and now at NParks. In 1979, when he started, his boss was Chu Thiam Siu. Today, the old friends meet at Bishan Park, a park Chu had a hand in creating. Born 2 years apart, both men often recall their career highlights together in a time of duty and service.
The Merdeka Generation was really at the nation building period. So we have to succeed. And we just do the work. Every day we are given new challenges. So we try our best. It was hard work, but I think I enjoy it. And if I look back, I do think that in a very small way for in greening, I have a little bit of contribution, and that should be enough.
Singapore in the 1980s. Along with getting greener, the city got cleaner. Wide-scale redevelopment kicked in. Out went slums and kampongs. In came high-rises for living and working. But some of old Singapore survived, and it's been freshened up considerably. The change still startles Chu Tiam Siu.
For people at my age, I think all of us remember this Singapore River as a smelly, filthy river with a lot of tongkangs and coolie working around. The benefit of cleaning the Singapore, whether Singapore River or Garden City campaign, I vividly remembered the then Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, mentioned to us. He was saying that if I can prove to the world that I can manage the city, that the grass is well mown, the trees are well looked after, providing shade, then I can give confidence to the world to invest in Singapore. And I think we see the result today.
This place is a reminder of a past during those critical early years in the 1970s and 1980s, when the Garden City was still a vision and a plan. Part nursery, part laboratory, and banks of plants and shrubbery. This was the deployment center for that nationwide mission. Chuah Hock Seong continues to visit regularly.
We can select this on cactus. I think we can take this, but try to get this height, and then we can reserve about 200-300.
Okay.
He's back today with a colleague from the old days.
Projects also.
So Yu Lam is Hock Seong's Merdeka Generation compatriot.
The color not so bright.
Both Hock Seong and Yu Lam are consulting each other on a new project. And whenever they meet, it's always just like old times.
In early days, I quite often come with Mr. Chuah to nursery to look for the plant suitable for roadside planting, especially at the AYE, Commonwealth Avenue West, and West Coast Park.
Trips to the nursery remind Hock Seong of the urgency of his mission as a young horticulturalist.
It wasn't a 9-to-5 job. Even if I go out with my families, automatically I will start to look at trees to see any wrong to the trees.
The work was unending. But thanks to the commitment of a generation of green fingers, the plan of a garden city was in bloom. By 1983, Singapore's economy had hit double-digit growth rates and was an envied success story. And as it got greener, it also got cleaner, newer, smarter, and more aspirational. By the middle of the 1980s, the city had been transformed. Chuah Hock Seong's job had to evolve with an evolving city. Singapore in the 1980s is a hive of industry and a hotbed of enterprise and investment. The city also transforms and renews its urban landscape at breakneck pace. High-rises dot the city's skyline as new roads and a new rail transit network transforms Singapore into a modern metropolis. The city's national gardeners keep pace with the sweeping change. Chuah Hock Seong, who is a decade into his job as a horticulturalist at the Parks and Recreation Department, continues to innovate with the times.
In the 70s and 80s, a lot of people jaywalking across the major roads. So the Public Works Department started to build additional overbridges on the major roads. to encourage pedestrians to use overbridges rather than just crossing the roads to reduce the traffic accidents.
Pedestrian viaducts not only save lives, they offer a unique setting for plant life.
The plants tend to soften and beautify these concrete structures along the roads, and it makes walking across the pedestrian overbridges pleasant.
But rejuvenating structures or replacing them with new ones as roads are re-networked required all greenery, painstakingly grown and maintained, to be torn off a little too often.
You just imagine, after 5 or 6 years hard work, and you start to see some result, and we have to remove for them to change. And that's why we find that we cannot go on with this. So we discussed with the roads engineers, we must come up with a way that when you repair or you change your bridges or do some maintenance, our plants are not affected.
The unified approach entrenched by the Garden City Action Committee a decade earlier pays dividends. Nowadays, Chuah Hock Seong's prized bougainvilleas have pride of place in planters that are modular and easily transferred. Small, hardly noticed features, but in the grand scheme of things, a triumph in policy planning and execution by many hands and agencies.
Selflessness is very important. Everybody has to work as a team. You alone cannot make things happen. We must chip in, everybody must help each other so that we can progress. And eventually, we want it to be able to sustain. That is the key thing that we need. It's a sense of responsibility because we not only plant trees, we must make sure that the tree grow and the public like it and then appreciate all this greenery that we have put in.
It's a Sunday, but veteran gardener Chuah Hock Seong is happy to spend his days off at work, as he's always done since his early days on the job.
Sometimes we need to make sure that the park equipment are in good condition, the newly planted trees or shrubs in the parks are growing. So I have to bring my family, my 3 kids, my wife, to the parks while they were happily using the play equipment, running around. I will check all these things. So even today, my son, who is now 36 years old, even recall the happy hours that we had in the parks.
His dedication is infectious.
I think we can give an oral picture of this edible garden and you can put a photograph in the report.
All right.
Today, Hock Seong is with Penny, a colleague also from the consultancy arm of NParks.
Raise planting bed.
The raised planting bed, yes.
Along with other members of their team, Penny and Hock Seong advise governments abroad on creating garden cities of their own, drawing from the Singaporean experience.
There's 2 colors.
Oh, that one is this color, yes.
This, as Penny draws from the wealth of experience of a Merdeka Generation mentor.
He's a boss that most staff would want to work with and work under him for life. Because he's very approachable and he's very knowledgeable, but at the same time very humble.
Chuah has been a mentor to many younger colleagues.
I think we can add few different varieties.
He regales all of them with stories of his past, during the heady days of the 1970s and 80s, when the ambitiousness of a nation's visions was well matched by a generation's attitude and commitment. Just as Penny learned from Hock Seong, Hock Seong learned from Dr. Tan Wee Kiet, his former boss who's 10 years older.
People like Chuah Hock Seong are very major conduits of what we learned and how we pass on to our new generation of staff. The insights gained by people like Mr. Chuah are very important, especially so when he can communicate it.
Some of the lawn area, but the flower bed are open. We the people in this Merdeka Generation doesn't worry about hard work. We are very committed to the work. At the same time, we are also wanted to set up a a family with kids that eventually can contribute to the countries. I think we are also very concerned of our younger generations. So we also want to set a good example to our children that hard work is very important.
Later Singaporeans have enjoyed far more opportunity than the Merdeka generation. Nonetheless, these individuals stepped up for their city and their nation, sacrificing, struggling, innovating, so that someday all Singaporeans would benefit.
I would say majority of us who are born in the 50s have this mission to make Singapore a successful country and to create Singapore as livable cities for the next generations. And many of us, I would say that we really bite the bullet and make things happen.